Resuming debate, the honourable member for Mount Royal.
Speaker, colleagues, how many of you have come home from a long business trip and gone to your airport and seen a tremendous lineup at customs? I know that in my old job, I did this all the time. I used to work for a multinational. I'd be traveling back from Europe or from the United States, and I'd arrive at Trudeau Airport. And suddenly I'd be faced, after being exhausted, after being away for days, and just wanting to get back and see the family and get home, I'd see a lineup that went on from here to the end of the room. Hours and hours of wait at the airport. Now, of course, this is in my pre-Nexus days. Now with Nexus, I can just walk through the kiosk and get out into the airport in no time. But without Nexus, in the old days, that was problematic. It was hard. There was a long wait. There was nothing that makes me happier than avoiding that very long wait when I enter the United States. There are over 12 million people that travel back and forth between the United States and Canada every year. More than 500,000 Canadians spend more than 1 month in Florida every year. In fact, from my riding, the Côte St. Luc Senior Men's Club actually shifts a number of their activities to Deerfield Beach in Florida during the entire winter season. I can go to Florida on a constant basis and get local programming from our Senior Men's Club if I wanted to. But that just goes to show how many Canadians of all ages are affected by pre-clearance. Pre-clearance is a wonderful thing, and I'm so happy that an agreement was reached with the United States in March 2015 to provide for better pre-clearance for travelers and goods, and that our government has worked hard to extend that, to expand pre-clearance, to now include the Billy Bishop Airport in Toronto and the Jean Lesage Airport in Quebec City, and importantly, the Via Rail train terminal in Montreal if I ever choose to take the train to New York City. Of course, Mr. Speaker, it's slower today to take the train than it was when my grandfather was doing it in the 1930s and 40s, but still, the idea is there. So I'm really happy that pre-clearance is being expanded, and I think that the idea that we're now able to have Canadians and Americans who are in Canada or foreigners in Canada be pre-cleared and fly to all of the different U.S. destinations that we can fly to today in Canada, from Pearson or from Trudeau or from Vancouver or from other pre-clearance approved airports, which don't have facilities in the United States for customs, meaning that we can go to many, many smaller destinations, over 50 that you can go to from Pearson instead of 27. This is a very, very big thing and very important. So the whole idea of opposing this bill is something I have trouble understanding. Why is that? I can understand that there are concerns over some of the expanded powers that are given to U.S. border officers. I think they're minimal, I think they're fully understandable, but I can understand their concerns. But what on earth is the alternative? Canada and the U.S. have worked together to identify irritants on both sides to allow for better pre-clearance. In the event that we're not constantly working together and identifying U.S. concerns with respect to Canadian pre-clearance, then we are eventually going to put ourselves in a situation where it's not just going to stay the same as today, it could be restricted. So for me, there's absolutely no reason why we wouldn't have sat down with our U.S. partners, as I understand the previous government did, and come up with what it is that they see as improvements, enhancements, or we see as improvement enhancements in pre-clearance. And that's what's happened. And so I personally look at it and I see very little in terms of the irritants that are being talked about. Number one, in terms of a frisk. The frisk search, you can already do it, you can still do it. With a strip search, they can still ask a Canadian to do it, the only difference being that if no Canadian is available in a reasonable period of time, then the American officer can do it. Now, how often is that ever going to happen? I believe I heard the minister say, in all of the more than 6 decades of pre-clearance, we've never yet had one incident where Canada and the U.S. had an argument about pre-clearance at a Canadian airport. So, to me, this is a minor issue and something that is certainly can be resolved at committee if nothing else and doesn't require further debate at second reading. The idea that we should not allow somebody to be questioned if they withdraw at the border. This is another added feature to the bill that I've heard complaints about. Well, there is an issue that if you're sending people to the border and they see that if they're viewed with suspicion they can just withdraw, certainly does seem to me to encourage the idea that you can have people trying to probe the border to do nefarious things. So I have no issue with the idea that somebody can't simply just withdraw and walk away without being photographed and asked, why are you walking away? I don't really see what this terrible issue is. I want to remind everyone as well, I've heard a lot of concerns that have been conveyed because of who the President of the United States is today, and concerns related to the identity of the current President. Our history with the United States has gone on for centuries. The United States is a Western democratic country, our closest ally. We cannot close our eyes to the fact that the procedures in the United States are Western democratic and civilized procedures. Whether one likes or does not like the incumbent in the White House should not be how we judge our trade relationship with the United States, our pre-clearance agreements with the United States, or any of our other agreements with our closest trading partner and best ally. So that, to me, is surprising. One of the things that I think is worthy of note is that we export $400 billion a year to the United States and more than $50 billion in services. More than $2.5 billion in trade crosses the border every day. Les exports à l'États-Unis sont 20% de notre GDP et plus de 2,5 millions de jobs au Canada et 9 millions d'emplois aux États-Unis sont liés à les exports entre le Canada et les États-Unis. Nous avons 6100 Canadiens qui ont des emplois qui sont liés à la tourisme. Et les visiteurs de les États-Unis sont 2/3 de nos visiteurs qui restent le soir au Canada. We have to facilitate trade through agreements like CETA, through agreements like the one working on with Ukraine, like the expansion we just did with Israel. And we have to do trade missions. And we have to do other things to allow people to cross the border and goods to cross the border more easily. Border delays are one of the biggest impediments we have to growth. We need to encourage enhanced and easier trade. It is frustrating to see a Canadian business say, well, I don't want to expand and do business in the United States because I'm worried that I will not be able to get my goods there easily and quickly. And the same is true. We want American companies to come to Canada, to create jobs in Canada, to send their goods to Canada so we have cheaper markets and lower prices for Canadian consumers. We don't want people to be deterred because of, well, I don't think I can get there. It's going to take me 4 hours at the border to travel to my Canadian office. Or, wow, I don't know if my goods are actually going to get there on time. For me, a pre-clearance arrangement like this one goes toward a larger philosophical principle that I agree with, that we need to enhance trade, that we need to enhance the ability to cross the border easily with our closest ally. And it also goes to an idea that the faster you get people across the border, the better. One of the things that I want to end with is, again, I've heard a lot about the concerns they have with pre-clearance. Well, what is the alternative? If you don't have pre-clearance, just like you have in every other country in the world outside the United States, when we go to that country, our citizens are speaking to border officials based on the laws of that country, according to the rules of that country, and under the terms of that country. It is only with pre-clearance that Canadian law, Canadian human rights, the Canadian Human Rights Charter, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Human Rights Act, all of these apply to travel to the United States. So given that the alternative is worse, given that it's an excellent concept, I strongly support this law, and I urge us to get it to committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments?